Welcome to my documentary, Why I Love Sci-Fi. And I guess just as I am unpacking my car, you see me getting ready to go in to do a book fair. In this documentary, I'm going to kind of unpack my mind. I have been into science fiction for over 20 years as a creator, and probably my whole life as a child. Ever since I can remember, I was imagining something. And I kind of feel like I wanted to say something. I have been doing a video blog in my car for about 3 years or more, and I got used to sharing my opinion. And I just wanted to put a little documentary together to kind of encourage people to enjoy what I enjoy so much, and that is sci-fi. And I also kind of wanted to deal with some of the problems or road bumps and share opinions that I have on where science fiction is going. So in this documentary, you're going to get all of that. And I just kind of wanted to give you a little introduction before I go in here to share my ideas and welcome you into my brain. As I'm going into this book fair, you're going into my brain. And my motto is always, I love sci-fi because it is the total freedom of your mind. So liberate your imagination and enjoy the ride. Thank you.
So today, we're at the legendary Tate's Comics, and we're with the legendary Jeff Carroll. So Jeff Carroll, what exactly is science fiction, and what is black sci-fi in your opinion?
Well, there's a lot of ways to define science fiction, and even black science fiction. But to me, science fiction is an opportunity for us to explore the what-ifs, the unknowns, if this had happened, in a way to test drive our hypothesis, almost the way engineers play out things in terms of testing theories. That's what science fiction is. Science fiction is using the scientific, whether it's even time travel or electronic science fiction or electronic gadgets. So science fiction is all of that. And black science fiction is just black people's interpretation on what science fiction is. The use of science to solve our problems, to speculate about the world, and to envision things yet to come. I like sci-fi in books. I mean, I may go to the bookstore once a week, sometimes twice a week. And sci-fi started in books. It is also contemporary. You know, people think sci-fi is history. It's not history. So when I go to the bookstore, the first place I go is the magazine rack. I like to read the makings of the stories, you know, what inspired the author. And then when it comes to movies, I love to see the pictures behind the scenes of the making of the movie and how they design the characters and the set. When I also like to see and read up on the impact the story has had with the people in the community. I like sci-fi in books. I like to go to the book section in the bookstore, and even graphic novels are 5 comics in one. So when it comes to sci-fi, you get the longest story in a book. And that's what I like about books. I need my stories complete. I'm a nosy person. I like tie-in novels. I like the to read the Star Wars novels. Any movie that I like, monster movies, King Kong, Godzilla. I love to read those novels. But anyone who loves sci-fi, you really have to read it in books. It's the most authentic because it's the uncut voice of the author. And really, that's the best thing about reading a book, is that you're listening to the person who created or who's answering the sci-fi what if, the sci-fi question. So I always encourage people to check out books and go to the bookstore, get inspiration. So that's why I like going to the bookstore.
So, why do you love sci-fi?
I was raised in the church. I started off with the church because maybe this is the seed that planted in me, and I didn't really find it out until later. But Proverbs 29:18 says, "Without a vision, the people will perish." And maybe that was engraved in me, so I'm gonna give that a little bit of credit. But part of why I really like science fiction is because it allows me to escape the world that we live in, and I'm an internal optimist. So science fiction to me, outside of the dystopian worlds, are worlds that have solutions to our daily problems. So when I go into a science fiction movie or read a book or explore a comic book, I'm able to envision problems that are solved, envision a world that has solutions to the ills that we have here. Or I also envision, people and getting their just desserts. Let's find out how this ends. I think I'm also nosy, so I think there's a lot of reasons why I like science fiction. For me, I started off as a young boy, going to Star Wars, and that did something to me. I used to have comic books, so I really don't even remember reading them all, but I had gone to Star Wars, and that movie at 11 years old resonated with me for the rest of my life. So I don't go to bars, I don't go to strip clubs. Sorry about that. I go to sports bars to watch basketball games, but other than that, I don't really go out to drink. I usually love picking up a book, going to a movie, or reading a comic book. That's where I get my escapism from. And sci-fi is what I use as an escapist tool.
You mentioned Star Wars, and even before Star Wars, there was Star Trek, and we even have the remake of Dune. So why do you think sci-fi is not only popular, but it's remained popular pretty much since our lifetime?
I got into Star Wars first. I didn't get into Star Trek, although that was before Star Wars, until after I was in college. And my intellectual mind really took off. I started watching the reruns of Captain Kirk and Spock, and exploring different scenarios. And I think for Star Wars, it's different than Star Trek, and even Star Trek and Star Wars are different from Dune. So let me just say, for Star Wars, I think there's a connection to the what ifs in our society. I always tell people the biggest science in science fiction is social science. And Star Trek, above all of the others, really explores social science scenarios. And I think that's what makes that popular. Now, Dune, man, I saw that, when I was in the 90s. I saw, cable television, what is it, Channel 11. Now we have Sci-Fi Channel. So I saw the original a number of times. Never really got into it. I thought it was cool. They were riding on worms. And as I became a science fiction writer in my 30s, I started looking at Dune, Asimov, and some of the other science fiction, Western science fiction writers and American pioneers of science fiction, a little different. And I'm down with the question, the analogy that Dune portrays. To me, it's just an analogy of one scenario, whereas Star Trek portrays and addresses a variety of different scenarios. Same thing with like Star Wars. Star Wars is really just a spaghetti western in space, and it's just having fun. And it portrays a few different things, but Star Wars is really out of having fun. Star Trek is a little bit more social science, And Dune is just really one scenario, and it's the exploration and looking for spice. And when you research European explorers, yeah, they have a lot in common with Dune, because that's what they were looking for. They were looking for spice. They were looking for cures to their illness. Henry Hudson and them were trying to find the passage around to China to get to outcut the Arabs they had to trade with to get their spices and minerals and medicines. So Dune plays a lot on that, but it's really just one scenario. But I'm enjoying the remake. Yeah, I hope they can get to the second one and close it out with a nice trilogy. Every week, I go to the comic book store. I go to comic book stores because I like going to the store. I like getting my comics. I like seeing what came out this week. I'm a weekly subscriber, so I get my comic books every week and every other week when they come out. Once a month is a new comic book, and every week one of the comics that I subscribe to comes out. So I go to the comic book store, I see people my age, I have a rapport with them, and I like talking to them about science fiction and what's in the movies. So I actually don't even remember going to the comic book store as a child. I think it was after my first movie screened at a comic book convention in 2005. They had a film festival that I screened my movie, and I met a black illustrator named Eric Allen Nelson, who started working with me on my first comic book, Imani the Killer. And in the convention, I saw all types of indie creators, and they were all pitching their ideas, and they had comic books that they wanted to make into movies. And I was like, man, I could do that. So I started going to the comic book store to look for illustrators. But in the comic book store, I met like-minded people, and they turned me on to not only other illustrators and other creators, but to comic books that were science fictional speculation. We talked about that science fiction element to them, and it was amazing. I have been reading comics since a child, but I never valued them for their sci-fi speculation. Comics are a great medium for sci-fi. People think of Marvel, DC, and their superheroes, but superheroes are science fiction speculations. Comics still are a medium used by sci-fi writers to speculate about outer space, to speculate about things, the different what-ifs. Not only that, but how do they affect the human being? And so that part of the sci-fi is there, but I think what separates comics from books and film is that there's not that many writers and creators in the kitchen. It's usually just the writer, the illustrator, and the editor. And many times for indie creators, it's really just the writer and the creator, or just the illustrator, or just the illustrator. And you get a raw sci-fi. You also get images, because some of these science fiction speculations are just very hard to describe, and people's imaginations don't always fit with the descriptions that the writers try to write. So sometimes you need to have science fiction in pictures. So I encourage everybody to go check out some science fiction in comic books. There's a lot of horror in comic books as well. It's not, as horror falls under science fiction, but horror is there too. So don't think of comic books as just for kids. So I suggest you all go to your local comic book store and start subscribing. Pick up a previews magazine, flip through it, and see what's coming out. And if you go to a big store, you may see something on the shelf that you're interested in, and ask the shop owner, the person at the desk, about the comic. I know they'll love to talk to you about it. You can go and say, hey, I read this book or watched this movie. Do you have any comics that work? And they'll come up with something. So I always encourage people to enjoy comic books and the medium of comic books.
So let's just talk about the brothers and sisters for a minute.
Okay.
How come sci-fi is so important to black people, and how do you think we can actually benefit from it?
I'm trying to go hard on this question, all right? Try to bring it in because, I'm the political guy, got a history with Reverend Sharpton, Minister Farrakhan, Jesse Jackson, Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark. So, these are people that are important to me. Professor James Small is my close mentor, and he reads all of my books. And when it comes up to agendas for black people, I feel like the Bible verse, like I said earlier, without a vision, the people will perish. And I think for us as a people, we need to explore our answers to these what ifs. I know the movie Armageddon is one that I love to use because it's a central question. What do we do if an asteroid comes to Earth? And, in the Western world, they came up with the answer, hey, let's blow it out of space. And when you watch the Netflix show, I think came out like 2-3 years ago, The Wandering Earth, they infused their martial arts into their response to that. And that was to move the Earth out of the way of the asteroid. That was crazy, but they put jets, big engines on the Earth and changed its rotation to move it out of the way of the impacting asteroid. And I think Africans and Arabs, indigenous Americans may all have a different answer. Indians may have a different answer to that scenario, but we got to stop thinking that all human cultures, whether humans are exactly the same or not, all human cultures impacted by the environment or whatever it is, have a variation of responses. I have an actual story called the Church of God in Space. And in that story, they addressed the incoming asteroid. And there's two answers given. And one of them is by alien species. To give away the story would be an injustice, but just say they do something other than blow up the asteroid and move the planet out of the way. And it's really cool. And I think, Black people are a tribe of African people, and we have a unique answer. We have experience living directly under European people through 200 years of slavery, and I think that gives us a unique perspective. Also, the perspective of African people from the continent, and they call it African sci-fi. That has a role because all of science fiction is our answers to these futuristic questions. And since we don't know, like, what will aliens do when they invade us, all answers are on the table because there's no evidence to prove that any of them might be wrong. So whether you think they're like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or you think they're the day the Earth stood still, or you think they're like Independence Day, that's one answer. A lot of Black people think like the Dogon people in Africa. They may think they're returning Egyptians. So all of those answers are on the table. And that's why, to me, Black science fiction is important, because our answers value the overall body, and they're important to us. And we got to know that we think in a unique way.
Yes. The movie theater. The movie theater is actually my bar. Some people go to the bar just to hang out. Movie theater is where I go every week. It's my first love. I go to the movie theater because I got the movie pass, and every Friday and Saturday you will see me in the movie theater. I think movie theaters are like my therapy. The escapism of just sitting in a place away from my home is what I need to escape, and it allows my blood pressure to go down because I can get away from all the pressures of the world, the news, things I need to fix around the house. Just is amazing. I used to actually sneak into movie theaters. I like the way that there's an anonymous experience. It's an anonymous socialization in theaters. You have to understand that, like, I'm a grindhouse filmmaker. I started going to the movie theaters on 42nd Street. I hate a quiet theater. You can't read a comic book or a novel with a group of people. So the medium that you can get like real-time reactions is movies. And I have that, and I remember seeing like and I love that, right? I remember seeing like Avatar in the theater and Black Panther, and when things happen, I just remember the reaction of the audience as much as I remember the movie. It's like another movie. And then I got a chance to screen my second movie, Gold Digger Killer, in the theaters. And man, just hearing the collective wows and the ahas was like fuel to my mind. And I say, like, since CGI has gotten so much better, the less people have to use their imaginations. And I say, because of that, movies are the premier medium for science fiction.
And we're talking a lot about the importance and the positive portrayal, but what are some of the negative effects? Like, in other words, do you think black sci-fi can actually be threatening?
I don't think black sci-fi is threatening to black people, right? I think not realizing that we have our own answer to questions can be a problem to black people. And I also think that just like black people are threatening to people like H.P. Lovecraft, who seem to be just threatened by our basic existence, what we might do with our pen, with our imagination, is possibly threatening. I remember talking to Abby O'Doon at in Atlanta at the National Black Theater Festival, and this was maybe 10 years ago. But we were talking about the freedom of the imagination. Brother from another planet, where the brother was coming from slavery on another planet, and how limiting that was to think that our existence is defined by slavery. So on the other side, for us to imagine freedom may be something that is threatening to those who wish to keep us down. There was a book by Robert Heinlein called on Farnham's Freehold. And I like Robert Heinlein's story, Starship Troopers, is one of my favorite science fiction stories. But he was known to play out different scenarios. And he has a post-apocalyptic book, a doomsday book, where the guy lives in a bunker. And when he comes out of the bunker after the apocalyptic event, black people are now in charge. And they are using the white women as cows for milk, and they're using them for breeders. The white men are found being eaten by the black people. And to me, that is their fear. Their fear of us is that we will do to them what they did to us, and even worse. They're the ones that made up all these big stereotypes of Africa being a jungle with cannibals, or South America or the South Pacific. But yet they're the ones that have cannibalism in their history. So, I don't want to trigger, what's that old guy who used to be the governor of Florida, DeSantis. I don't want to trigger his white fragility. But to be honest, I think the imaginational potential for black science fiction creators is something that's scary to the H.P. Lovecraft type white people. The regular white people that's not, marrying black people, living amongst black people, they down with us. They know that we're not those type of people, that they know that we're very forgiving. And in fact, I've been writing for over 13 years. We have a thing called the Black Science Fiction Society. Shout out to Jarvis. We have the State of Black Science Fiction with Milton Davis out of Atlanta. And I haven't read any retaliation black science fiction stories yet. The best one I got is my man William Sims out of Philadelphia, the late great William Sims. He wrote a book called Zorro, A Tale of Alien Avengers. And to me, that's the closest. And all he does is come with his aliens, and they end oppression of black people. But that's it. They don't colonize white people. They don't eat white people. They don't rape white women. None of that. There's no reverse, what was that movie, Birth of a Nation? There's no reverse Birth of a Nation going on with the black pen in black science fiction at all. So I don't know why they're threatened, but they shouldn't be threatened, but I kind of got an idea why the little H.P. Lovecraft type people are threatened by the Black Pen, because they're just threatened by us, all of the Black Lives Matter people. We know that they'll shoot us on sight.
Earlier we were talking about how like sci-fi has had an effect on Black people, but let's talk about horror. How do you think horror has had an effect on Black people with things like The Blackening or even Jordan Peele?
I'm a lover of Black horror. Okay, I got me the Blackening shirt. I'm loving it. I think this was a really good few years of a Black Pen. In terms of Black horror, it is the same thing as Black science fiction. Whereas science fiction is the speculative category for science fiction, horror falls under that. And for Black horror, it's a different game. I love to mention H.P. Lovecraft, because not only was he scared of Black people that are living, he was scared of Black people that died. Mm-hmm. And he, and Black people's ability to communicate with our ancestors. He calls them the dead. We have a book of Coming Forth by Day, Coming Forth by Night, and he calls that the necromancer, and people that speak to the dead are evil. Black people don't have that same thinking. Even Black Americans don't have that.
Real quick. People always ask me, where do I get my ideas and inspirations from my stories? And I always get them from, of course, going to the bookstore, watching movies, reading comic books, and just talking to people, even the news. And I love the conspiracy theorists that put videos together like on TikTok. Those are amazing. I also get some good ideas from just reading about history, different things that I didn't know. I watch a lot of documentaries on new inventions, new planets, new discoveries, how life would be, and just kind of get into all of that information. But what really allows me to bring it all together is when I'm cutting them grass. When I'm cutting my grass, it takes me about an hour, and I go into the grass cutting with like an agenda, and I'm going to go sort these problems out and come away with some answers to a good story or something like that. But cutting grass really helps me. So that's kind of where I get my ideas from.
When we hear a door slam, our old aunts and grandmothers may say, oh, that's just your uncle. And that's not a joke. When I say that, people know, whether they're Dominican, whether they're Haitian, whether they're Cuban, Trinidad, Puerto Rican, anywhere throughout the diaspora, whether they're in New York or LA or in Alabama, Georgia, the South, all of us have that collective thing. So for us, Black horror is not demonizing the dead. I have a book called It Happened on Negro Mountain, and that explores what it would be like to not have a bad ghost, but have a horror story. And I remember promoting it. People were, of course, the name was provocative. It happened on Negro Mountain, which is a place in Western Maryland. And on that place is crossed the Mason-Dixon line. So it was a group of escaped Africans and escaped slavery, and they set up a colony on the other side of the Mason-Dixon line where it's free. And they fought to protect their colony. And the leader died, and they named the mountain after the people and called it Negro Mountain. So I always say, like, crazy Negroes live up in that mountain. But I wrote a story where the ghosts of those ancestors still protect that mountain. And I think, like, for me, my grandmother, my father, my mother, all these spirits that knew me, that loved me while they were alive, still have my blessings in the afterlife. So I think Black people have stories like that in Africa. They have deities that are not all bad, that are not all good. I think Black horror is emerging out of the shadows of Western theology and Western mythology, where everything dead is bad, and we're finding our own way to express ourselves. I think we're on the precipice of that, and a lot more is to come. The blackening was very funny, and I think we're going to move past the humor aspect and get to more things that are terrifying. So I hope that answers the question, but we'll see. But it's emerging. It's something that I love. I love to see black people being scared. It's not about having a black dude like Candyman who running around killing us and looks like somebody who's in our family. I created my own character called Baba, which was a masked serial killer inspired by Jason and Michael Myers, and that is something that he's got 3 movies out. We're working on the 4th movie. So I wanted to do something a little different like that, but that's my own work. And I think there's other people that have motivations to do different things with horror, and I really can't wait to see it. I'm a political comedic guy who approaches stories like that. I take joy in calling myself a liar. And because of that, I enjoy people falling for the lie, enjoying the lie, and reveling in it. So none of my stories are true because they're all called fiction. And I pride myself on getting people to possibly believe that something that I'm writing could possibly happen or is already happening somewhere else. I started off writing in high school, and I would go to the Apollo Theater and write on amateur night and come back and give like who won and what they sang or what they did to perform. And that started my ball rolling by seeing my name and my words in print. I did that all the way up until I graduated college. I think my senior year, the newspaper changed a little bit. But then when I graduated college, I thought I was going to be more of a writer. And I started writing bios for musical artists in the record industry. And I progressed into reviewing movies. And I did that for about maybe a year, where I would go into movie studios in New York, where it would be about a 20-seat screening room. They would give me a press packet with the descriptions of the characters and bios on the stories, synopsis, and I would write a review. And I did that for a Brooklyn newspaper called the Big Red newspaper. And notable movies that I reviewed was House Party, the first House Party, Death by Temptation, and that had Dwayne Wade in it, Kadeem Hardison, the one from A Different World. He starred in it, and Death by Temptation is a classic because it's an independent black horror picture. But my last movie that I reviewed was, I think, Under the Cherry Moon, and I decided not to write that review because I like Prince too much, and I didn't think the movie was good, and it takes a lot to write a negative review. And I was in the screening where Prince was, and we didn't know Prince was there, and people was trashing the movie because this is New York. Mm-hmm. People were trashing the movie, and Prince got up and he got mad at the audience, and he walked out of the theater. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't want to put that out there because it felt bad. I felt bad for Prince. And then right after that, I went to see a screening of Boys in the Hood, and I decided I couldn't really enjoy movies and give them a real good review without a real live audience. And seeing Boys in the Hood solidified my opinion because I was in there with a 40 ounce of my own, and the crowd was hood out, and it was one of the best screenings that I ever went to. And those 2 screenings put me out of movie reviewing per se. I still do a little bit of it on my Facebook page, but not so much. I took a writing class after that. Shout out to Laz Alonso and Tracy Moore Marable. I took a writing class, and then I took an acting class. And in Tracy Moore Marable's acting class, I was in there with Laz Alonso, and you know him from The Boys and Avatar, and he's a cool dude. I took an acting class. I learned I kind of didn't want to get into that, and then, or how hard it would be. And then with my writing class, I really took to the writing. It was really imaginative. and I wrote a script that I have interpreted and then adapted it to a comic book, and I'm still working on that. I took the writing class back in 1996, so that's an old story, but it's my first story that I wrote, and I think it's really cool. And if it ever comes out, that's how long ago I wrote it. But since then, I've been writing film. I wrote Holla If I Kill You, my first horror film, low budget horror film about a comedian that had a breakdown, and that reflects on my 20-something years being an entertainment agent for my company, Red, Black, and Green Promotions, where I represented people like Monique, Kevin Hart, Michael Blackson, JB Smoove, and a host of other black comedians. And my second movie is called Gold Digger Killer, and that was my first movie that I got the coverage to enter it in a film festival. And that film festival, it won. It was the Hip Hop International Film Festival. I think it was the first international hip hop film festival, and I won Best Picture. So I'm a hip hop classic, a hip hop legend. That's also one of the movies that's really tearing up on Tubi. And then I made 6 movies in total. 4 movies after that. My last movie, The Black Nun, and it was my first time trying to write a spoof-ish movie. Where you would always see these movies that were Pacific Rim, they came out, and then the Sci-Fi Channel would come out with Atlantic Rim. And so I wanted to do something like that with my movie. So I did The Black Nun. And somewhere around that, I started writing comic books. I did not have that in my sights, nor did I have the sights to write science fiction books. But after my movie Gold Digger Killer came out, we had a writer's strike, an actor strike in 2008, and that derailed my film career. And then I got into comic books and writing novels. I have about 10 to 15 novels, and I have short stories that I've written in the quarantine that are just set to come out now. So I have some really good stuff coming out. My comic books, I have a couple of comic books that I sell at conventions and mostly do Kickstarter comic books. But this summer I connected with some people, and I'm in the process of getting my stuff to major publishers so that soon you'll see them at comic book stores all over the country and all over the world. So that's me. I like to say that I still am true to my original roots, that I always throw a little politics, a little political edge into my writing on the likes of Robert Heinlein, Gene Roddenberry, and I like to thank the inspiring writers that pushed me, L.A. Banks, Stephen Barnes, of course William Sims, are some of the people that I use as my mentors and motivators. So
I tell people all the time, and sometimes I even want to rewrite my bio and say that I'm a political thinker who writes his ideas in science fiction. And I've always been somewhat of a person who combined politics with science fiction speculation. It got so much that a couple of years ago, I had an hour drive to work, and I had nothing to do. I got tired of listening to the music and the songs, and ideas would get into my head. Opinions would get into my head. At comic book conventions, I would run into people that would ask me questions, and the conversations with those people would stay in my head. I might see a post on the social media that I want to respond, and I just didn't feel people responded to it enough, or all types of things. And I just couldn't. I killed all the people that I talked to on the phone, and they were tired of hearing me. So I decided to start doing a video blog to increase my social media presence. I do a video blog, and now I don't even know how many people listen to it. I think I got about 400 or 500 subscribers. Might even be less than that. Actually, I don't know. But I get a chance to get my opinion out. And sometimes the video blog is really just for me to
to share my thoughts and opinions on something. If I think the movie is good, or or bad, right? Or if I think it could have been better, right? Because I'm still a movie critic somewhere inside me. And then also I like to help people out, So my video blog, I may answer questions on the writing process. I may tell people where I get my story ideas from. I may decode a story that somebody created. So all sorts of things. But I do a nice little video blog, and science fiction is just that. Some of the interviews that I've seen with some of the older science fiction writers from the 50s and the 60s, well, more so the 60s and the 70s, I really like seeing their interviews and getting to see how their mind works. So for people that are fans of mine, this is a deeper dive into me, and for people that don't know me, it's a beautiful introduction. So I call it the Sci-Fi Express Lane because I was driving when I used to make the videos, and I still make them in my car. It's got good sound. So even though I got like a 15-20 minute drive, I may get there and still have to sit in the parking lot like a minute or two before I finish my video. But I really like the videos, and if you get a chance, come check me out. Like I say, like, subscribe, share, and of course, most of all, comment. So that's it.
What TV show, book, movie, comic book, or even video game embodies the best of today's sci-fi in your opinion?
The best of today's sci-fi. Let me see. I do like Into the Spider-Verse. I think Into the Spider-Verse that just came out this year embodies a lot of that because he's bicultural, Black and Dominican, and it's very hip, and it uses modern colloquialisms. It has science fiction elements to it. So that's one. I would say that in comic books. What I really liked was Luke Cage, the series on Netflix, because that Luke Cage was a character that was created by white creators, well-intentioned white creators, but I was joking earlier that they gave Luke Cage a metal belt and a tiara, and he spoke jive. And while that was probably cool in the time, in the 70s, it's still sort of played out now. And when they rebooted it, I used to just tell people, don't even ask me what I write. Go watch Luke Cage, and you'll see the infusion of hip-hop, the infusion of coolness, and the infusion of speculations. And I also say Black Panther, the Chadwick Boseman movie, the first one, even the second one, it embodied a lot of what I think contemporary sci-fi offers. I think those elements are universal. You don't see a lot of Black created science fiction on the walls of comic book stores. I think this is probably the best year for Black created comics. You had Black writers, and a lot of them were writing white created characters, but some comic books now, they're seeping through with originally Black created characters. And of course, Black books. Oh my God. Zorro, A Tale of Alien Invaders. But you have to go to MV Media and check out some of their anthologies. They have taken science fictional tropes like steampunk or cyberpunk and flipped it to a Black side and called it cyberfunk. And I happen to be a part of a couple of those where they have a cyberpunk book called The City, and I have a story in there called Dreamer's Recall. And then they took the spy genre and did a book called Spy Funk. And then they have another book that I think is probably going to be the greatest Black science fiction book ever, and that is called Space Funk. And that is set to come out probably in 2024. But if you were to ask me, in movies, yeah, I got to give it to Black Panther. In books, I give it to what they're doing in MV Media. And the greatest science fiction book ever written, Black sci-fi, is Zorro, Tale of Alien Invaders. And that's the type of book that I'm patterned my universe after. In comic books, you just got to look on the independent circuit. I could shout out a bunch of them, But right now, I'm looking at the ones that are coming to shelves, and you have to check Kickstarter. I think comic books are really emerging, and we're getting into our own voice.
And what are some of the big questions that you think sci-fi needs to answer?
Okay, so some of the big questions I think black sci-fi needs to answer, or sci-fi in general. Sci-fi in general needs to answer the future of diversity, right? We're not just talking about putting people in movies and putting people in roles that were written for white people, right? We're talking about really giving the diverse pen a chance. Shout out to Miss Marvel. I love the way they did the Indian culture there. I love the way they explored the Asian culture in Iron Fist, right? I think it was the Rings, Iron Fist, or was it one of the Marvel movies. And then we just watched Blue Beetle, who explored the Hispanic Latino culture in South Central America and Mexico. I think that's beautiful, but a lot of those are still diverse creator interpreted white characters. So we have to get past the white characters that they give us a chance to reinterpret and let us create our characters ourselves. So I think that is the mainstream what if. And then for the black sci-fi, I think we have to go down the lines of answering the main what ifs. What is going to be the future of global warming? And have fun with it. Let's play with zombies. Let's play with AI, artificial intelligence. Those are big what ifs, the same what ifs. It was years ago that Isaac Asimov, I think he's the writer of I, Robot, wrote I, Robot and gave us the 3 laws. Those are their 3 laws. What are our 3 laws? What do we speculate AI will do? We're here. AI is here. Everybody talking about Chat GPT. I'm an English teacher. I teach it in my class. But what do we think as black people will be the future of AI? What do you think about space? They just released the UFO documents that show that there are some things that we really can't explain going on around the moon, going on in parts of the earth. What do black people think those are? So I think we need to speculate about the post-apocalypse. I think we need to speculate about space. I love zombies, so let's speculate about human breakdown or whatever we think zombies will come from. Maybe we need to speculate about ghosts and afterlife a little bit more. Maybe we need to have a black H.P. Lovecraft. I volunteer to be that person, but I think we all can be that. And then I think the last one is AI. I think we need to speculate about that. And there's a whole lot of other things. We can go back in history and speculate, what if we weren't taken from Africa? We can do some alternative histories and have some fun like that. If I ever did Bill and Ted's Bogus Adventure, I'm going back to give some guns to Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass, and we're going to take things out. Native Americans or indigenous Americans are speculating about their truth and their stories. So let's have some fun. I think they're also working on a Nile Valley anthology of stories from the Nile Valley. So in the alternative history, we have historical truth. We need to explore that more. We need to write books about our people in ways that tell it from our perspective. So we have a lot of work to do as creators, and also as an audience. None of us can create things that the audiences don't support. So the audience has a role. We have to stop being scared of science fiction. Christians, they're coming, science fiction is the devil. You're going to put demons out there. No, this is our tangible element. We use science fiction to explore the unknowns, the what ifs. Same thing that engineers do when they plan a city. These are the same things we need to do, because the major cultures that is dominating the earth right now, they're going on to the moon. They're thinking the moon and beyond. Maybe we don't travel there physically, but maybe we need to send some black scientists out to the Dogon people and start getting into the Dogon culture and say, how did y'all learn how to travel the celestial space without ships? And maybe that's what we need to do. I have a story coming out in our black science fiction magazine called Cannabis Man. And that's exactly what he does. He uses cannabis to explore extraterrestrial travel, outside of our body travel. Maybe we know how to travel to other planets outside of our physical bodies. If that's something that our ancestors and our people know how to do, then that's what we need to invest in. So yeah, it's tangible, it's very real. If you can't dream it, which is your imagination, you can't achieve it. So we need to use our dreams more revolutionarily.
And what challenges confront sci-fi and black people in the future? Like, how do you feel about that?
Well, I think film is always money, right? And film is also getting the support of the industry to find finances for your film. So when we see movies like They Clone Tyrone and The Blackening do well and Malignant, it gives the industry a chance to support us because it shows that we do have market value. Tubi, I ain't gonna hate on Tubi. All 6 of my movies is on Tubi and other streaming platforms, but Tubi gets a nickname for being a showcase of a lot of black film, mostly urban drama, but it's just like street lit books. People didn't believe we read, and we came up with our own genre of books called street lit. So a lot of people didn't think we had market value in film, and now we're pretty much carrying a streaming platform. And that's messed up because there was a lot of black streaming platforms out there that could have put all these movies on, but unfortunately, they didn't take root like Tubi did. But I think other challenges, comic books, comic book industry is shifting. We're moving to digital. Printing prices have chased away a lot of people because, now to buy a comic book, the ones on the shelves here, these ones are like $5, $4, and your profit margin is really tight. And everybody wants to make more money. The illustrators are charging more. Writers got to get paid. Publishers got to get paid. So I think those are some of the challenges, but I think they're very universal. However, when things affect America, they affect the disenfranchised and the smaller groups harder. And black people is still just 13, 15% of the population. Even when we include the Hispanic population, we only get up to about 25, 30%. So we have a smaller margin, but I think the opportunities are there because our stories haven't been told. And somewhere in the late 2020s or the early 2020s, things got tired, so we kept seeing the same stories over and over. So if there's anything fresh, it's going to be your Miles Morales. It's going to be your Static Shock. It's going to come from the independent world, where comic books are thriving, and we have a lot of independent comic book creators creating original characters that are connecting to people. So on the other side, I think the obstacles made it better for us because we are going to be the future of comic books, and science fiction as a whole.
All right, earlier you mentioned Tubi as being a good outlet. So what other outlets are there that you think are good for science fiction, especially black sci-fi? Do you think Netflix, Hulu, or even Peacock have good options?
I don't know the various stream platforms. I think we're emerging in there. I think they all try. I think Netflix and Tubi, by having Cinnamon and having greenlit Luke Cage, but none of them have really embraced some of the independent created stuff on the streaming level. Urban fiction is dominated by on Tubi and Amazon, but it's all creator owned, meaning we fund them ourselves. Tubi, Amazon, not too many of them putting their money behind the script that they believe in. So it's still very limited. We're emerging. Maybe by the success, we got some Tubi originals, but people are just putting their money up for that. Tubi hasn't said, "Hey, I'm going to give you a series. Here's a budget." Especially not science fiction. They have with some urban stories about drug dealers and strippers, but nothing about a space explorer, nothing about a black planet, nothing like that has emerged on any platform that I know of.
And what are some things that you're excited to see for the future of sci-fi and black sci-fi? Any movies, TV shows, or even video games that have you all giddy?
I mean, being on the inside as a creator, I see a lot of things that I think are going to happen, and they fall short. Like I was excited about Kim that Michael B. Jordan did like a couple of years ago, but that series of black aliens dissolves. So I'm not going to say I'm not excited about anything, but it's not really on the film side, right? I'm more excited about what I see in comic books. I like David Walker. I like my man Rodney Barnes. Rodney Barnes did a remake of Blackula in comic books, and that's amazing. And he has a Philadelphia universe that I hope merges with his Blackula. David Walker has done a whole bunch of good stuff. He's rewritten a missing element in the reboot of Planet of the Apes, and he has black characters that are in there. He has his own series, The Hated. It's a Western. So those are some of the people that I see on a big level. I got to give a shout out to my man Marcus Roberts right here in Florida. He has an anthology of black horror called Shook, and supposedly I'll be in the next one after the next one, but we're gonna push it out there. But Shook features black comic creators that couldn't get their stories out in other comic books publishers, but he brought them together and it's changed the market. So hopefully that once this book comes out, other publishers will give black horror a shot. However, I'm excited mostly. I think the peak of my excitement is with the Space Funk book. I am probably going to buy 20, 30 copies of it just to give out to people for Christmas, because I think it's going to be that imaginative, that liberating, and that good for not just black people, but for everybody. I want to read all of the stories in it. And this is a black publisher soliciting other black creators. So that's that. Of course, I have my own stuff. I don't even know what I want to speak on. I've just finished the script for a fourth Baba movie, and I have a comic book based in my Harlem Shake universe that is American manga style. So you might want to check for that next year, 2024. And my next Fingernails book. And then I'm just wrapping up my fourth book on my Black Planet fantasy series, Planet of Kibalon. And that's coming to a graphic novel called You Picked the Wrong Planet. And that should be out later this year, if not early next year.
So earlier you mentioned Luke Cage actually having a tiara.
Yes. So we're in a comic book store doing this interview, Tate's Comix in South Florida, and I got you see Luke Cage wearing the tiara, tiara and the chain belt. These are things that you're not gonna find in a black created comic book. Okay, I think there's a little bit of Junkyard Dog and then a little bit of Mr. T, but he came before all of them, and those are really outliers. So for somebody to be a hero like Luke Cage, he isn't even wearing a yellow shirt like that. That's a little too stand out-ish, but I guess he's the over-the-top guy, dressed almost like a jive dude. I hope he's not a pimp image in this, but the remake, what? The remake is all sci-fi, it's all black, he's black reimagined superhero. So yeah, I just wanted to give you that example.
You would look good in a tiara, by the way.
Yeah, I'm not wearing no tiara.
All right. Earlier you mentioned strip clubs. Would you go to a sci-fi strip club? Just saying.
Well, I think when you write and you envision things, there is a little bit of going to that place that you have to explore when you're writing something. So, in many of my stories, I explore the environmental strip clubs, but that's as close as I go. So I'm down here in Miami area, and it's very popular. So I do have opinion against them, but I don't judge people that go to them. And you never know, maybe one day. But I do write about them. My characters go to them, so that's as close as I get. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoy Why I Love Sci-Fi. My name is Jeff Carroll. Shout out to my man Niall Faulkner. I hope I'm saying the name correct. And enjoy this documentary. Engage with me. If you read any of my books or if you watch any of my movies or my comic books, I appreciate the love. Wakanda forever, Black Sci-Fi forever. Out.
That's an outro. That's how you do an outro.
Wow. Amazing. All right, so how long was that?